Don't move.
So there are a number of things that Enron did wrong. One of the things that stood out for me was quite interesting. So they pushed for deregulation of the electricity in California, and they used this as an experiment, potentially to do for the rest of the country as well.
High ego people are also slow to recognize the actual mistakes that they were doing. So rather to control or take over the responsibility, they are trying to minimize the impact.
Perceive it as a story about numbers and complicated transactions, but really it's just a story about people. Welcome to Management 301A. Today we're going to be discussing Enron.
The top man, baby, for a buck. For a buck. If you're looking for someone to put you out of that ditch, you're out of luck. You're out of luck.
And the first point is, Adam.
Provide an overview of the organisation, the structure, culture, mission and vision, and the ethical business practices.
So, Enron Corporation was America's 7th largest energy company based in Houston, Texas. Just before filing for bankruptcy in 2001, Enron employed approximately 20,000 staff and was the largest national gas and electricity company in the world at that time. One of the largest.
One of them, yeah.
Yeah. So, in 2000, Enron claimed revenue nearly $111 billion US dollars, which was so great. And according to Fortune magazine, Enron was named America's most innovative company for 6 years in a row, from 1996 to 2001, which is kind of impressive. And kind of. Yeah, and Enron bankruptcy represents the worst financial and moral collapse in the U.S. corporate history.
Well, what was the structure like? It was hierarchical, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
So with vision, Enron was basically the world kind of a leading, they wanted to be world leading energy company, which is kind of innovative, efficient energy solution, and better for the environment worldwide. So they were operating internationally. For a mission, they had 4 key values: respect, integrity, communication, and excellence. With the respect, they claim that we treat others as we would like to be treated ourselves. We do not tolerate abuse, disrespectful treatment, ruthless, and arrogance. So, integrity, we work with customers openly, honestly, and sincerely, which wasn't really true. And then when we say that we do something, we'll do it, and stuff like this. So communication, well, we are obligated to communicate. We are here to talk with one another and listen. We believe that information is meant to move, and the information moves people. Excellence, we are satisfied with nothing less than the very best in everything we do. We will continue to raise the bar for everyone, and they also, with all dealings they've done, they claim that they are open and fair to everyone, so all dealings were signed open and fair in the end. But on the other side, Enron, kind of an outspoken message was to make numbers, and if you steal or cheat, just don't get caught.
Ultimately, who was responsible for the downfall of Enron? Only a few years ago, Enron was the nation's 7th largest corporation, valued at almost $70 billion. Pundits praised the company as a new business model. This trading floor was manned by America's best and brightest, charting the futures of energy and power. And high above each with a private staircase, Ken Lay and Jeff Skilling had built their own plush staterooms. They were known as the smartest guys in the room, captains of a ship too powerful to ever go down.
Question 2 was identify the ethical business strategies implemented by this organisation from the perspectives of stakeholder interests at a national and international level. How effective are they in helping to achieve the overall objectives of the organisation? Going back, looking at footage from the past, their overall objective seems to be to maximise profits and encouraging shareholders to buy Enron shares. So people are basically just interested in the bottom dollar there. And so if they're getting those sorts of people involved in making their CSR decisions, then you expect them not to be too detrimental to their profits. Internationally, Enron was approached by the Indian government to help out with a power plant, with their power shortage problems.
But they couldn't pay for it, could they?
Yes, well they ended up agreeing to build it, but then the government eventually dismissed it and said, no, we're not paying for it because it's because it was excessively expensive. So in terms of shareholders, whether they were just charging too much, which is quite a possibility, or whether the Indian government didn't want to pay, that's another possibility. But overall, for the stakeholders involved, in terms of shareholders, this was great up until that point. It wasn't so great in terms of the Indian government and the Indian population. In terms of CS, is that really explaining how effective they are in helping to achieve the overall objectives?
I'd say it is, because they're trying to do their job basically. So they're trying to provide energy for another company, or in this case a country, but they failed to do so because they just didn't do their research on their target. In this case their target was India, and obviously it's not one of the richest countries in the world, sadly, and they couldn't afford to pay the bottom dollar, and that's it. Now it just sits there and it goes to waste.
That's it.
Come work for us.
We encourage our people to do new things, try new things, experiment, step out.
We begin by attracting the kind of people that are more comfortable in an environment of change.
You know, when you work for Enron, you're going to see the newest thinking. You're going to see the newest markets opening up.
Enron Online, a fabulous, fabulous story. Probably put on.
They were so good at their acting that they convinced corporate America that they were smarter than anyone else.
Alan, with our sincere thanks and admiration, we are pleased and indeed honored to award you the Enron Prize for Distinguished Public Service.
Power business continues to grow up 25%.
They continue to sell the company as being a very stable place where it could predictably increase profits 10 to 15% a year.
So identify the offensive or defensive strategy of the organisation.
So yeah, for the outside world, Enron was appealed to be the picture of the corporate success. Everyone wants to work for Enron, do something with Enron, you know. And on the other side, the company tried to do well in manipulating the financial statements and lied to their investors in the effort to show that they are still alive and, you know, really prospering company. But from the point when the public were trying to find out what actually something wasn't feeling right, so there were million questions out, but Enron was really defensive about each question. They never actually published any balance sheet ever.
I'm not a beat reporter, so I would have had no reason to look at Enron, but Jim Chanos mentioned to me that I should take a closer look at Enron's financial statements, and it wasn't clear from Enron's financial statements that there was fraud here, but what was clear is that something didn't add up.
In March 2001, Bethany McLean, a reporter with Fortune magazine, first raised questions about Enron's financial condition. She asked a simple question in the article that no one could seem to answer. How exactly does Enron make its money? You got very upset at her, didn't you?
I very specifically remember the telephone conversation that I had with the Fortune reporter. She called up and started asking some very, very specific questions about accounting treatment on things. I am not an accountant, and I could not answer them.
He became really, really agitated. He said that people who raised questions like this were just trying to throw rocks at the company, and that I was not ethical because I hadn't done enough homework. And if I had done enough homework, I would understand how off-base my questions were.
Mr. Skilling, it appears as if you were trying to bully someone who was asking very basic questions about Enron.
I said to her, I have got 6 minutes left before I have to be in a meeting, and I can't get into the details, and I'm not an accountant. And she said, well, that's fine, we're going to do the article anyway. And I said, if you do that, I personally think that's unethical. Yeah. And the next day, our chief financial officer and our chief accounting officer flew to New York at Enron's expense to sit down, not with the editors, but to sit down with the reporter on that story and help her understand the questions that she was asking.
And the next day, we sat in this small, dark, windowless conference room for about 3 hours going through the various aspects of the company's business. And I'll never forget this. When the interview was over, the other two executives packed up their things and had left the room. And Andy Fastow turned around and looked at my editor and me and said, I don't care what you write about the company, just don't make me look bad.
Examine the effectiveness of the TBL reporting, perceived transparency and accountability of the organisation. So TBL stands for triple bottom line, so not only looks at the profit, but also looks at people and the planet in terms of your reporting as well. So in addition to your financial statements, you look at the culture within the organisation, its people, internal and externally, as well as the planet. And now Enron's values were listed on their website and explained earlier by Sissa. So at face value, they looked like they were quite ahead. They looked like they were quite like
the substantial company.
Yes.
But then again, there was a lot of smoke and mirrors because it was a financial black box. Like there was money coming out, but no one knew where it was coming from.
They looked transparent in some ways, but they weren't particularly transparent in other ways. For example, they didn't release any financial statements. There was a lot of talking and
Just avoiding the question in general, yeah.
Section 5 is evaluate the impact that foreign social norms and standards have on international business.
So every employee in Enron in international level, they were educated on the corporate's vision and values, which they claim that they are working with the local and international law and regulations. So they are following the rules and regulations, safety, environmental impacts, and they're trying to improve the life standard of people in a region all over the world. So everywhere that they operate, they are kind of working for the people in the community. So from the perspective of public, what the mission said, they are doing well for the state or nation, so the local environment. On the other side, it was energy. And it's really hard even today to have environmental friendly energy companies. And back in the days, they haven't, as you mentioned before, they haven't really published any reports that would claim, yes, we are doing the
proper thing.
Proper thing. And as we said before, with the India issue, they built actually the building which never worked, but back in America, they thought everything's working well, even they were claiming that they are making a profit in the ad, which wasn't true.
And so the stakeholders thought everything was going correctly and everything was fine and making money, but in actuality the Indian factory wasn't operational nor finished.
No.
So they're just using that as a front to boost their profits up a bit.
So Section 6 is assess the cradle to grave process, including a life cycle assessment of the product. Now, Enron had a number of products. One of the life cycle that I'd like to focus on is natural gas production. They owned a natural gas plant in the UK, as well as numerous natural gas plants in America. So basically there is a lot of gas under the ground, big deposits of gas. It's sucked out of the ground, put into a bottle, or put into a cylinder, compressed into a liquid, transported over to the gas station. Now the gas station burns it, which turns a cylinder and powers the plant, which in turn makes the electricity. Now, because they're bringing out a lot of gas from underneath the ground, there's a lot of compounds, a lot of chemicals that were previously not in the atmosphere, and they're being burned, which is also bringing a lot of chemicals that were not into the atmosphere. And as we all know, with climate change principles, it is impacting the atmosphere. Now, in terms of their CSR report that we brought, they have identified a number of ways that they can minimise their waste, minimise energy usage, as well as decrease environmental fines.
In part 7 we're going to talk about the legal responsibilities and ethical compliance in Enron. Now obviously there was various responsibilities to the stakeholders in the company, right? People who invest the money. You need to do right by them, but then again at the same time, that didn't really follow that too much to the mark. Now their method of accounting was mark-to-market accounting, which means basically, if I want to make a deal with Adam and I want to say, okay, we're going to go in business, in the next 10 years we're going to make $20 million, and I publish that in my annual report. That's what mark-to-market accounting is. They can falsify or they can claim based on the current events and situations of today that this is how much money they're going to make in the future. So that is legal, but it's not really that ethical when it comes down to it. And in terms of ethics, Ken Lay, who was the CEO of the company, he wasn't an idiot. Like, he had a PhD in economics, and he was constantly pushing for the deregulation of the energy market because he was really close with the Bush administration.
In the midst of the energy crisis, his friend George W. Bush became president.
I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
Ken Lay is going to be Secretary of Energy?
Get out of here.
No. How great would that be for all the players in the market?
It'd be great. I'd love to see Ken Lay be Secretary of Energy.
Ken Lay did have easy access to the Bush administration. On April 17th, he met with Vice President Dick Cheney and strongly argued against the imposition of federal price caps in California.
We're doing everything we can to help in California on a short-term basis. There's not a lot you can do. You can't manufacture kilowatts in the West Wing of the White House.
We're fighting with both hands tied behind our back. We no longer have the power to stop this. If the federal government doesn't help us, we're a dead duck.
The Milgram experiment has a lot to say about Enron because I think people lost their sense of morality. Like Milgram, once you accepted the idea that behaving inhumanely was okay, you could do anything. And the shocks increased with the number of mistakes that they made.
I can't stand the pain. Let me out of here.
Can't stand it. I'm not going to kill that man, eh?
The subject, the real subject, is begging the scientist-looking person to stop too, and the scientist only says the experiment requires that you continue.
Please continue. Go on, please. You accept all the responsibility? The responsibility is mine, correct. Please go on.
In a way, Skilling was almost like the guy telling those people below him that it was okay to up the power.
420 volts.
Basically, it said that the test subject, as long as they're hearing from someone of authority, they can actually do bad things. Yeah. Summarise the overall effectiveness of the organisation's business ethics strategy.
It was effective in the end because it made share prices climb, that made them skyrocket, and everyone sort of profited. Even though it was illegal, they were successful in doing what they did. Is it ethical? Like, absolutely not. But, yeah, they became accountable for what they did in the end, and I guess that's that.
Their ethics strategy, I mean, in terms of their environmental health and safety report, it looked great. They were making change or trying to implement change to make the company more accountable in terms of their environmental impact.
Yeah.
And they had won a lot of awards from independent companies that had nothing to do with them. So on the surface, it looked like they were doing a great thing.
Absolutely.
From the public view,
From the public view, it was great, but from the internal sort of view, it was just smoke and mirrors. So 9, improving strategies and precedents. Outline how the organisation's strategies could be improved, providing at least 2 references. Well, they could have employed a different method of accounting, besides mark to mark. That would have really helped the legal implications that arose, but at the same time, it wouldn't have helped their profit a lot. But maybe they still would have been around today, so there's that. A similar situation happened to Sigma in 2014, which is a camera manufacturing company. They do like really high-end lenses as well as mid-market lenses. Basically, they falsified $15 million in their inventory, which is the same sort of thing that I guess Enron did with all their other smaller companies, and especially the Indian situation. And yeah, they got caught out for that as well, so it's sort of a similar situation. Similar thing happened at Tyco, where the CEO and CFO embezzled over $600 million just for the heck of it. And yeah, it's no different to what happened with the higher executives towards the end of the cycle, I guess, because all these people were leaving the company with huge sums of money, and there wasn't really anything left for the employees. And that's sort of really how it left off. But look, at the end of the day, everyone was in it, and they knew what was going on. Like, once again, it goes back to like that synergetic component of like synergetic corruption, basically. So everyone contributed to this overall thing, and now it just sort of got out of hand and became what it was, which was like a huge corrupt company. Yeah, it was like a snowball effect.
Inside.
And yeah, like they could have stopped it earlier. They could have stopped it way earlier. But yeah, like you said before, they make one lie, then they have to try and cover up that lie with another, and then it becomes more financially. So they lie about $8 million, and the next year is, you know, this much, then this much, and it sort of just builds up on itself, and they shit themselves.